Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We've been looking at and talking about the fact that both parties, as far as the PDM is concerned and the opposition, primarily the PTI, should come to some sort of an agreement in the sense that there should be talks, and perhaps that is the only solution and the way forward for the kind of crisis that Pakistan has been seeing for the last months, I would say. Is that going to happen? Of course, this is the second day of the PDM and the PTI both sitting together, but is it likely to yield any tangible results for both the parties? That remains to be seen. We'll be talking about whether what can we expect from this sit down, which is now going to extend to again Tuesday. How is this going to pan out, and what kind of legal complications can this pose? Also practically, what will this entail? All of these are questions that I think everyone is asking at this point. Of course, in the background, we've seen the Prime Minister take a vote of confidence. In the background, we've also seen the resolutions that have come in the Parliament and what they entail as a whole, and mean where the Parliament stands on the issue as far as judiciary and the Parliament is concerned, the issue of judiciary and the conflict within judiciary is concerned. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Aneek Zafar, who is a political analyst. Thank you for joining us today. We also have with us Zulfikar Ali Badr, who is spokesperson for Chairman BPP Bilawal Bhutto Zardari. Thank you for joining us. Aneek Sahab, like I said, there is of course some talk from time to time. We've been talking about let talks happen and let there be some agreement, and perhaps that's only the solution. First of all, of course, the courts has gone and talked about, the courts have said that let's do that seems to be the only solution. We've had them give out orders, frankly, which we've seen, and they don't seem to be having the kind of effect that we've seen. What do you think will happen as far as these talks are concerned? How fruitful do you expect them to be, in your opinion?
To begin with, I think at this moment both parties which are involved in the talks are on their extremist side. They both are on their maximalist position. The maximalist position is that PTI wants earliest elections. They want the government to give a date for the resolution of National Assembly. And Sindh Assembly and Balochistan Assembly, and then immediately after the budget dissolve all these assemblies and announce for elections. Now, if we look at that, I don't know how PTI is calculating all this, because if these reports are true, because all these reports are not coming directly from the negotiators or the committees formed for that. These reports are coming from various journalists and some journalists who are known to be close to these quarters. And I don't know how they are calculating it, because even if the budget is approved in say mid of June, the assemblies are dissolved somewhere end of June or early July. That means the elections are going to be held in 90 days, and 90 days takes you to October. And if the assemblies are these assemblies complete their tenure, then the elections have to happen within 60 days. So if assemblies get complete their tenure and get dissolved in August, again we fall in October. So
you're saying
it's end September, early October. Yeah,
give or take a couple of weeks is not going to make that much.
Yeah, that much of a difference. So I think PTI has almost resigned to the fact that they cannot force an early election on the government, and they will have to have some face saving. It will depend on the government that what kind of face saving that they can offer to PTI. As you have mentioned, a few weeks give and take. That's all what I
so you're saying it's not really about those couple of weeks, it's about a lot of the other issues that now hang in the balance. Let me come back to you. Zulfikar Sahab, can you hear me?
Yes.
Zulfikar Sahab, Aneek Sahab here, he's been talking about the fact that of course there is this, by and large, the fact that the May deadline, so to speak, it doesn't look like it's going to be followed, or practically speaking, it's likely to be followed. What do you think is behind this, as far as the former Prime Minister Imran Khan is concerned, and his hanging on to that May, that May, the date of May being that important? What is it behind? What is behind all of that? Is it some kind of face saving? How do you look at that?
Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Thank you very much, Maruf, for inviting me to your show. The question which you have raised is about Imran Khan Sahib is looking for some kind of face saving or something
Yes.
about the May 14th election. I think he is much focusing on the ground reality, that he oversees that there is a support from the public that he is looking forward that he is going to get, and he is going to get the majority once the election is going to happen on 14th May. But if the election is going to happen, the other parties will have to also participate. But the rest of the parties have actually nominated their people, and uh, but PMLN has not actually participated. They have submitted the nomination papers, but they have not actually given the tickets for the symbols to their candidates. So one party is out of that race. So it seems very difficult that without PMLN, the election is going to happen. So Mr. Khan is actually pushing to focus uh, to have the elections on 14th May. He is very much anxious, and he is very much looking forward, and he has that anticipation that this election, which is going to happen on May 14th, he is looking forward to have the majority in Punjab
But you
and
think,
in
but
KP.
Zulfikar Saab, is that really the reason that he is insisting on May? Because, it's unlikely that a couple of weeks after May he's going to lose his popularity, or is he that uncertain of how popular he is? I mean, it seems to be rather there seems to be more that, more I think he's looking for more from the PDM or the government. Isn't that true?
You see, I give you my opinion. Once Khan Sahib took that decision of dissolving two of the assemblies in KP and Punjab, I think that was a naive and politically very immature decision which he took. Because once you have a established house, you demolish it and then you say that I am going to build the house again. I think it's a very difficult proposition, especially in politics when you are in government, and when you are in politics, you struggle to become into the power, and he was in two of the provinces in power with majority, and he was enjoying the facilitation of the government, enjoying the power. But I don't know what happened in his mind, and he dissolved two
You're
of the
saying
assemblies.
it wasn't the
Now
best of his decisions. I agree. Let me come
it
back to
was a very nice.
right. Let me come back to you. I have with me Arif Chaudhry Saab, who is a legal expert, a senior lawyer. Ji, Arif Saab, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Arif Saab, practically speaking, there is, we saw that sources are now alluding to the fact that perhaps, what the PTI would like is that there should, a petition of saying that perhaps, there should be a reversal of Punjab and KP. Do you think that's legally a possibility? Is there a way to go back to that, in your opinion?
Yeah, thank you very much, Maruk. Neither it is legally possible, nor it's going to be the goal of PTI, because it is not going to help them in any way, particularly the kind of support they had. If
Okay.
they reverse and they take such a U-turn, I think they are going to lose that, because the now things are different. As my friend was talking, I really tend to disagree with him. It's, it actually, what happened. The dissolution of these assemblies was intended only to get complete election, general elections for the parliament and all the provinces. But actually, he started with such steps like long march and protest, street protest, and everything, and step by step, he had to reverse because all those steps which he was really looking for, that they may create results, and finally the government has to be pushed to a situation where they could come to terms with the holding of elections. But during those days, the government was also, if they naive or whatever you may call it, they were saying that, okay, if you are really interested in the election, early elections, so why don't you, dissolve these assemblies where you are ruling? So if you dissolve these assemblies, we are going to hold election next day. And because, the constitution is very clear on that, that if assemblies are dissolved,
But Arif
then
sir, what about the
it is not
legal? I mean, I'm asking if such a petition were really to be filed, what is in your opinion the legal status of that petition if that were to be filed as far as KP and Punjab Assembly are concerned? Is it
the
possible?
Constitution. No, you cannot reverse any action taken under Constitution because the action of dissolution of assembly was within the Constitution, and now restoration of those assemblies is not permissible by Constitution in any manner whatsoever. So there is no provision of law which could reverse that action. So I don't think that it is advisable, or any sane person would advise them to go to file a petition that the
Okay.
assembly may be restored. I don't
Let me.
think so.
Okay, fair enough. Let me come back to you. Arif Saab, we have with us Dr. Zarka from the PTI. Ji, Dr. Zarka, can you hear me? Senator Dr. Zarka, can you hear me?
Thank you so much, Maru. Yes, I can.
Ji, Dr. Zarka, is it in your, do you have like a, what is your party's position on, because of course there are sources that are talking about this kind of petition. I was asking Arif Saab the legal status of that, but is there a move by your party, or is it likely to be, perhaps going back to a reversal of the assembly situation as far as KP and Punjab is concerned?
Thank you, Maru. As I understand, the current issue in the National Assembly is that if the elections, because after dissolution of the Punjab and KP Assembly, the Constitution mandates that the elections should be held within 90 days. And if they are not held, then what is the way forward? If you don't hold them within 90 days, then that's a breach of the Constitution. And what I am, the conditions that have been put together in the discussion that's gone forth between the PTM and the PTI is that if this, if we go beyond this date, then you need a constitutional amendment, because the Constitution otherwise does not give any space. And if the Parliament itself breaches the Constitution, then it's like cutting your nose to spite your face. So that's something very serious. So I don't see any move by the PTI on the restoration of assemblies, but the current negotiations that are going on seem to be, as the PDM has filed for all the elections to be held on one day, and the PTI is discussing the various modalities of that going forward.
Okay, fair enough. Let me come back to you. Ji, Aneek Sab, there doesn't seem to be any formal move by PTI to confirm or deny whether they will actually go for, going back to reversal. And also, according to Arif Sab, he's saying legally doesn't seem plausible or possible. Overall, as far as this dialogue between PDM and PTI is concerned, do you think there's a division? Of course, we are also looking at between the parties also, as far as whether these talks should be held at all, and whether with the opposition at this time. Within the PTI also, there seems to be overall there doesn't seem to be a flat out agreement. We've also seen I think Maulana Saab voice some reservations on this.
First, on the restoration of the assemblies. The statement by the former Chief Minister Pervez Elahi actually
fueled this,
triggered and
very
fueled
true.
These stories, and today he even said that he had consulted Mr. Imran Khan, chairman of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf and former Prime Minister. So there is definitely something going on between between these two people, or sometimes Chaudhry Parvez Ilahi Sahab likes to sort of raise a balloon and try to see what the reaction is. Now coming back to the point of discussion between the parties, obviously PDM, Maulana Fazlur Rahman is flat out against holding any talks with PTI. There is no representative of his party in the government side committee. Government side committee has now expanded to almost 7 people, I think. On the other hand, PTI has only 3 people. But coming back to the point, within PTI also and PTI sport base also, there is some discussion that why are we going for it when we have Supreme Court's verdict with us that elections should be held on May 14th. Now, holding elections on May 14th are not physically, logistically possible. That time has gone. And as I said previously, that as one honorable guest was mentioning, that PMLN has not actually issued tickets.
They're in fact boycotting the elections.
They are not boycotting the elections. I mean, they think that's a futile exercise right now to even go into any by-elections or even go to these elections or in the process of these elections, because these elections on May 14th for Punjab are not going to be held. That is their considered view. And in case a new schedule comes in, then of course, then they can go for it. But I don't see that even a new schedule, until and unless the political parties agree between themselves, can be issued or implemented. Honorable Supreme Court has almost also
seems to be waiting for the parties to sort of
it
come
is
to
a
some
political
agreement.
matter, and political parties should come to some agreement and decide what is the way forward. How will the Supreme Court give it a legal and constitutional cover? That will be interesting to see if PTI and PDM and PDM's allied parties agree. Then of course there is an option of constitutional amendment.
Okay, let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Arif Sahab. Arif Sahab, legally speaking, as far as this decision that came, as I understand, an order was to follow. Has it come yet, as far as the Supreme Court is concerned? Arif Sahab?
Yes.
Gee, I'm saying, as I understand, there was supposed to be an order was to follow. Has that order come as far as the Supreme Court is concerned?
Not yet, to my knowledge, so far we don't see any
It doesn't look like it. And the Supreme Court also has said that, of course, it has encouraged talks, it's talked about it. But legally, how do you look at this? That there's a debate in the legal circles whether this has its own, whether it's something legally, what can one say, feasible to ask for the political parties to come to some sort of an accord, and of course questions like whether the Honorable Supreme Court really has options at this time. How are you looking at this overall?
Yeah, MAHRUKH, as far as a straight away answer to this question is concerned, I don't think that there should have been such a meddling on the part of Supreme Court or suggest them for parleys or negotiations, whatever. But as a matter of fact, things have gone so worse. On one side, the government, who is in the parliament, they are determined that they will not hold elections, and they will not act upon the orders of the Supreme Court. Supreme Court has now is limited with the options. If they go with the the execution of their verdict, the net result is that they have to act under Article 190. Under Article 190, because I am just cutting it short, instead of dilating upon what is going to happen, who is not going to do it, and when how they are going to call them, and then what action they have to take. Because as a matter of fact, the actions are now to be taken, under Article 190 to get it implemented. And in that case, MAHRUKH, it will be army. which has to be called, yeah, to get it implemented, because the Prime Minister will not come even to the Supreme Court. They have already written a letter that they, especially the Speaker, and even today he reiterated on his stand that I am determined that whatever mandate you have given me and you have bestowed upon me as responsibility, that I should not go to implement the decision of the Supreme Court. No matter whatever they are trying to interpret it in whatever way. But the crux of the matter is that they don't want to implement it. If they don't want to implement it, the choice is again limited. If you call the Prime Minister, and if he doesn't come, then you have to call the Chief of Army Staff and ask him to get it implemented. And in that scenario, situation goes to worse. So I think even the Supreme Court doesn't want to go to that extent. That looks like this
But do you think
scenario,
it's
because
also about the strength of the Supreme Court itself at this time? The options that itself, the Supreme Court seem to be limited at this time as far as the Supreme Court is concerned. Isn't that true?
the division in the Supreme Court, that also is visible. And even in case of a proceeding against the Prime Minister, they will not be able to find that kind of consensus which they had previously in the case of Yusuf Raza Gilani or in other matters. Now situation Nawaz Sharif. Now situation is quite different, because Supreme Court is so split visibly that there are two groups, and if anything, if the Chief Justice, Honorable Chief Justice, moves on, so he will get, animosity, I would call it, opposition from his own colleagues. So I think, all these factors together are forcing the
Arif Saab,
Supreme
at this
Court.
time here in Islamabad, there are, of course, it's like, that there has for months been, there are rumors flying left, right and center. Some of them, like you have just said, are not, even legally possible. A lot of the stuff that is being thrown around, but it also has a serious effect in the sense that, political stability, which is what we all want to strive for, which seems to be the goal even as far as the government is concerned, because of course it's links to economic stability, and these talks seem to be primarily dictated by that. Isn't that true?
Yeah, that's true. But Mahrukh, to my mind, things don't seem to be going towards that side. Which if we are
Okay.
optimistic, as we are now discussing, we are not the interested parties. We are onlookers, are otherwise, interested in a way that we, as citizens of Pakistan, we all are being affected, and so we really want that things should be settled, and that may be our wishful thinking. But as far as the real story is concerned, I don't think that there is any, a point where they could agree, because on one
Okay.
side, the government doesn't want to go to elections because whatever they have seen in the field, that is not, acceptable to them. The popularity of Imran Khan. I don't think, and I don't agree if
But
there
Ali
are
Saab, it
elections.
doesn't seem to be
He
popular. I
may.
mean, and the other side doesn't seem to want to accept the reality of the government at this time. Of course, the Prime Minister took a vote of confidence yesterday. There is a, there seems to be on both sides that there is, lack of acceptance, for the lack of a better word. Let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Zulfikar Badr Saab. Ji, Zulfikar Saab, you heard what Arif Saab is saying. He says that he has, he's not very confident about the results of these talks. Would you agree? What is your overall feeling about these talks? Of course, they will be going back to, we saw, the opposition going back to Imran Khan on, what has transpired in this meeting till now. Can you hear me, Zulfikar Saab?
Yes, I can hear you. I
Ji,
want to
so,
take you back
ji.
because Khan Saab's perspective was at one point of time he was never interested in talking to the people who were sitting in the government, who are sitting in the government. But right now, if you see that flexibility, few of the members are sitting from PTI and they are having a talks with. I think this is a good sign. They have shown some kind of flexibility, and once they come on the table of dialogue, they start having a dialogue and discussion to look for some political solution. And I think Supreme Court is also giving them some kind of relaxation that all the political forces and stakeholders should sit down and look for a way out for a political settlement and political solution. And it's not going to happen in one or two talks. I think there are a number of other rounds of talks that is going to happen, and most likely there will be some kind of a way out, because once they are on the table, so they have come up and they have made up their mind that they have to look for a common way out. That two things, one party is going to ask and one party is going to push for two things. So they both have to look for a common points where they are going to settle down and uh, agree to each other points on a common ground.
Fair enough.
So I think this is going to be very interesting. And on one point, you were saying that the PTI is going for a restoration of two assemblies. Mr. Khan has actually given a hint to his speakers to file a petition. This is going to be very interesting. That what grounds are going to they are going to
There's no
take
formal,
to file a petition?
Zulfikar Sahab, there's no formal, of course, decision on that. There doesn't seem to be. I asked Senator Zarka also, and she says that there doesn't seem to be, that she doesn't formally know where the party stands on this. Of course, we've had Chaudhry Parvez Ilai talk about this. Ji.
Will be looking forward that what grounds are they going to take to file the petition in the court?
Yes, let's see. Ji, Dr. Zarka, overall, as far as this timeline is concerned, it seems to be, as far as your party has said, that the dissolution of assemblies was, that the assemblies were dissolved because the PTI wanted that timeline to be followed, the 90 days timeline, and if that is not going to be followed, then perhaps, and it doesn't look like, practically speaking, there's any chance now that timeline can be followed. Do you think that, holding on, if it's possible from PTI to perhaps agree on October as being the date, which is what the government is saying. They're saying October should be that date where there should be all the polls should be held at one date, which is what your election commission is saying, which is what your army is saying, which is what your judiciary is saying. So it seems to be an all-out, as far as all the institutions seem to be on one page on that, apart from the opposition, primarily the PTI.
Thank you, Mahrukh. The Constitution does not allow for such a delay. The KP and Punjab assemblies their elections need to be held, and if October is politically, it will be an end game, because September, we know the president's term is ending, and the president cannot be elected unless the Electoral College, which is the provincial assemblies and the National Assembly and the Senate, they have to be there. Secondly, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court is retiring in September also, and the next Chief Justice is Qazi Faiz Isa as well. So, looking at all the political, how things are going to play out, it does not seem at all that elections will be held in October. If the elections go beyond July, they will not be held. This is because the current government is in no mood to have elections, because they can feel the vibes of the people who are very upset at the price hikes, at the way Pakistan's economy has gone down, at the way Pakistan's foreign policy has played out. I mean, look at the latest blunder from our foreign minister. He did not go to Uzbekistan for the meet over Afghanistan, which is critical to Pakistan's stability. And he
Dr. Zarka, do you think if it comes down to it and there is agreement that, there are assurances that elections will be held in October, primarily that will be agreeable to your party?
So how can there be assurances of a government that has never stood by anything it has said? This government has been one which is the farce that is going on in the National Assembly right now with the 124 members who are not there in the assembly. How can this partial assembly? It's a farce they are running. And how can you run the National Assembly with almost 1/3 of its members not being there?
But Dr. Zarka, your members, you chose to resign at that time. Your members chose to leave the parliament.
So what they have done is, it is a farcical setup, the whole thing. They accept the resignations of 5, then they don't accept the resignations of 10, then they accept the resignations, but they don't let people come in. They've made a mess out of the whole thing.
But Dr. Zarka, yes, okay. I mean, if there are politics being played on both sides, one can agree on that. But do you think that there is a chance now, you're leaving perhaps and then wanting to come back and then that not being allowed, all of those things. Overall, in your opinion, isn't it past time to move, past those issues at this time and talk about what's ahead as far as, for the country, for the economy, for, of course, the foundations of at this time, we're looking at what's happening as far as the legal side of things are concerned. So even when the courts are even at this time encouraging political parties to come to some sort of an agreement, isn't it time to put the past behind and just move forward by, from all sides?
So the Supreme Court is saying it is there to safeguard the Constitution, which is being breached by the current government, which has been breached by the resolutions passed by the government, because articles in the Constitution do not allow any sort of discussion about the rules and procedures of the judges in the Supreme Court. So the resolutions passed by this current National Assembly are in breach of the Constitution. And when you are talking about currently the Punjab government, the interim government, which is supposed to be there the Constitution allows for an interim government caretaker to arrange for the elections. If the elections are not being held, then this government is null and void. It does not have any mandate. It is not a democratically elected government either in KP or in Punjab.
But you are saying this, the government is there's a parliament in place, the Prime Minister has taken a vote of confidence. At this time, as far as the country is concerned, things are at a different, of course, you have for a time, your party has not chosen to accept this government, but otherwise, if you look at the reality of things, isn't it time to just move past? Let me come back to you on that. Aneek Saab, of course, whether these talks actually yield fruit or not, what other options are left, in your opinion, for the opposition if they don't actually have a result, in your opinion?
I think first things first, it will be very, very unfortunate if the political stakeholders of this country are not able to come to a conclusion or an agreement on these critical issues. That will be very unfortunate, because I, as someone who always believes in constitutional and parliamentary politics, am always disappointed when political matters are taken to the courts and over-judicialization of politics is happening. Most of the issues are being handled in the courts. Should not be the way. Politicians should be astute enough to decide between themselves. In case this does not move forward, I think PTI has only one option, and that is to depend on the courts again. But again, as we have seen, that government so far has successfully stalled the implementation of those verdicts. And as we were discussing about the options with the court, I would say that courts primarily function on their moral authority. Courts do not have any implementation arm of their own. The implementation arm is the executive. And there was a mention by perhaps Mr. Arif Chaudhry about the court directly asking the army chief to help them implement the verdict. I think that is not possible. This has happened in the past. In 90s, a letter was written by the then Chief Justice to the military, and the military had responded that this letter should be sent to the Ministry of Defense. And obviously, when the letter was sent to the Ministry of Defense, it was not sent onwards. Because under the Constitution, only the federal government under Article 245 can summon the armed forces in aid of civil authorities. So I think then PTI will not have any other option. They will have to wait for October, because that's when elections
are going to be. So at this point, in terms of options, let me go to Arif Saab. Arif Saab, it doesn't look like the court has many options either. You know, if there is an inability by the political parties to reach some kind of a consensus, isn't that true?
MAHRUKH, court has to stick to the timeline given by the Constitution. And
but
you know,
if that timeline is now
an
impossibility.
If you allow me, I just let me complete.
Ji, please.
You know, timeline is now already passing, and that's why the court has also asked the political parties to get involved into discussion and find out a solution, so that mutually they agree to a consensus, that and that consensus cannot go way beyond the timeline which has been determined given by the Constitution. So they have to stay within that. So that means few days plus, few days minus, maybe August or July. And because for that they have to, because the proposition is that instead of holding two elections for the provincial assemblies, they should hold all the general elections. And for that, if the government comes down to 2 months, I don't think that is a big difference. But as far as this proposition is concerned, that you just hold on to October, notwithstanding the fact the mandate by the Constitution and the order by the Supreme Court, we should not forget it. That irrespective of the fact that Supreme Court doesn't have its own force and it has to get it implemented through somebody, but Article 190, that is the part of the Constitution, and it mandates everyone, right from PM to Army Chief, to act upon the orders of the Supreme Court and to be part of, to get it implemented, whatever the orders are concerned. I don't think that that situation should reach. But they have.
What do you think the courts will do, in your opinion? What do you think the CJ or the bench in this case will do if the political parties say that they're unable to reach any agreement?
Yes, then they will summon chief executive of Pakistan, and then they will ask him about what happened about the implementation, because already they have denial from the chief executive, and the cabinet will also be part of that, who will be summoned, and
but
they will ask.
That it's not only the cabinet, it's also the parliament, because the parliament has also issued resolutions. The parliament has also categorically said that they don't want to release those funds. That is now, that's something that the parliament has now taken ownership of. So is it going to be also the chief executive, the parliament, the cabinet, everyone then that the Supreme Court summons?
No. I explained to you that the parliament doesn't come on the way. It is the government, federal government, and federal government is not only the prime minister. It is the prime minister and his cabinet.
Of course.
So
yes.
they take a decision, and now they are trying to get shelter by the parliament, and there is no provision in the Constitution to seek such a refuge or such a shelter from the House of Parliament, to await the decision of the Supreme Court. Had there been any provision, then naturally things would have been different, because the law is very clear. The order of the court is to be implemented, and if it is to be implemented, it is to be implemented in letter and spirit. So nobody, in Pakistan.
I think Arif Saab doesn't want to admit that the hands of the court in this case are also tied in this matter.
No. Hands of everybody are tied, I think, because, particularly if we run away from the Constitution, so then you can easily understand,
right.
what
let me go to Dr. Zarqa.
Yeah.
Ji, fair enough. Let me go to Dr. Zarqa. Dr. Zarqa, in your opinion, what are the options for your party if I hope that doesn't happen, but if there is no agreement as far as these talks are concerned?
MAHRUKH, I would appreciate if you let me talk out what I am saying, because every time when I'm speaking in the middle, you pick up and you interrupt me, and then you never let me finish. So I would appreciate if you let me speak.
Ji, please, Dr.
Thank you very much. I think right now Pakistan is at a place where we need to really think, because this current government in 1 year has brought down the economy, it has brought down the everything that is to do with the people. It's taken away their health card, it's brought down our GDP from 6% to less than 1%. We are facing insurmountable challenges, and there seems to be no end in sight. And
Dr. Zarka, there's
which is not available.
But in terms of options, unfortunately, I'm really running out of time. That's why, and I want to give you the chance to answer. What options do you think the PTI will have in your?
There's no point in giving me a chance if I cannot speak.
Please continue. I'm saying, what options do you think the PTI has?
The PTI is, we've come down to the table. We are ready to talk to them. But with the current fascist sort of regime that is there, I mean, look at Ali Amin Gandapur. He's got his bail, and they keep bringing him back they keep opening new FIRs on him all over the country, from Sakhar to Mithi to Larkana. It's nonsense. Today, the Prime Minister Imran Khan went to the courts in Islamabad, and they picked up all the people who were with him. It is such a joke. What is going on in our country? We are here, we are not going, we don't have our properties outside Pakistan, we are not controlling Pakistan from outside countries, but we are Pakistanis, and Pakistanis are not happy with what is going on.
But
and
Dr. Zarka, in terms of options,
has always taken the legal way forward. We have done the peaceful thing.
Right, fair enough. I understand. Thank you so much, Dr. Zarka. Thank you for joining us. Aneek Zafar Saab, thank you for being with us. Zulfikar Ali Badr Saab, thank you for joining us. Arif Chaudhry Saab, thank you for being with us today. As far as the overall situation is concerned, certainly everybody would like if there is some agreement as far as the political parties is concerned, and we can move on towards political stability with less talk about coming to roads, which keeps on coming to the streets, which is something that the former Prime Minister Imran Khan Saab keeps on alluding to. But in terms of options, as far as the opposition is concerned, also it's perhaps time for them to reflect on what options they have as far as asking for elections before October is concerned. If political parties do come to some agreement and agree on elections on one date, of course it will be a welcome announcement for all at this time. Let's see what happens on Tuesday now. As far as the overall political situation is concerned, let's see. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.